Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Behind the Canvas. This is episode 7, and today is a special one because the painting that you'll see at the end of the video is not finished. So stick around and find out why this is the case. I hope you enjoy the video. So my first step is always the sketching of the composition, and that is really clear to me. I think that's regardless of what type of subject I'm painting, this is what I go for because it just anchors the subject to the canvas and it makes it much easier to work with. I can correct any type of mistakes or um, envision more or less where the details are going to go much better if I do this in a very simple way with the primary lines of my subject. In this case, I'm using a photograph I took in Paris last year. So that was 2024. And I took it with my phone using the ultra wide. That's why the angles here are a bit too extreme. But yeah, so I'm just right now, those primary lines are just to mark where the buildings are. Afterwards, I moved to the underpainting. For the underpainting, I went for the Prussian blue for the sky and for a yellow ochre for the buildings. Mm, I usually work with a cadmium yellow, but I feel like that's very lively and it's a bit more, it has a bit more of an expression than the yellow ochre, and I didn't want this painting to jump out that much in that sense. The colors, I wanted them to be a bit more earthy, a bit more, let's just say, cozy. For the sky, obviously this Prussian blue, I think it's called, is extremely beautiful. Don't really think it represents the actual colors that I saw that night. Obviously, the picture that my phone took is decent, but it's not. I mean, it's not exactly what I saw, and I don't even think that I want to represent one to one the colors in the sky because again, I somehow maybe I'm in a like a little bit of a phase with this Prussian blue, and I really like how it just makes the sky so intense and so deep and so rich. I believe the sky normally would have been a bit more, don't want to say boring, but at least desaturated. It wouldn't have been this deep blue. Um, anyway, after doing the underpainting with the Prussian blue and the yellow ochre, I moved to painting the secondary lines. These secondary lines are obviously just to help me map out where the colors are gonna go, and they are more or less the main characteristics or the characteristics that stick out the most in my eyes of the building and the street, but nothing else. Again, I never start with the details. So instead of using more lines and keeping in with that detailed building using lines, I started building the form of the building with colors, and I started mixing colors for both the street and the trees in the background, and obviously the main building there. I was really looking forward to mixing these colors because like I said, I rarely work with yellow ochre. I really like the liveliness of the other yellows I use. But in this case, I was looking forward to seeing what type of greens I was gonna get for the shadows, which is another thing. Sometimes we don't really think that a green could represent a shadow, or at least that's my case. Sometimes I forget that shadows can, I mean, that combination of this really warm street lights in Paris with the blue sky kind of, I mean, they kind of blend together in a way that you end up having deep greens, muted greens, although very deep, as shadows or shades or darker areas for the building. And that's exactly what I was aiming for. I was really looking forward to seeing if it actually represents, um, yeah, what I was seeing. So at this point, I thought that the color combinations were really good, but they were lacking something. So I added a tiny, tiny bit of red just to lift up the colors and make it a tiny bit warmer. And I thought that that actually worked really well. I did a tiny bit mistake here. If you can see behind, underneath the brush right now, there's a triangle, and that was supposed to be left untouched. I really wanted to leave that that area like it is, but I didn't manage somehow. I don't know. I stopped thinking at that point, and I made that mistake. But that is part of the process. That's part of painting. Sometimes you make a mistake, and then you're like, okay, uh, I don't know if it's that bad or not, but I guess we'll figure it out in the following steps. This is a skill that I'm obviously still working on, but I feel like it really helps. Just accept the mistakes that you're doing, take them as part of the creative process, and then if you don't know how to correct them, then just take a break, take a break from painting for a couple of minutes, or start working on a different section of the painting, and then go back to the mistake, so you're not reacting to it. That you're more or less like creating a plan, or like leaving it be, unless it's something really, really critical. I don't know. Let's just say if I had done, uh, if I had painted a little bit of this darker colors on the sky, then I guess I would have reacted a little bit differently. I don't know. I would have tried to get rid of that color as soon as possible before it dries, but it wasn't the case. This is still part of the building, and so I didn't really care. I moved into the other section of the street, as you can see right now, and started painting the background, I guess, and and the trees. Those are trees. It's a front line of trees, and then on the back or behind that, you have more buildings. Now, as you can see, I added a little bit more color back to the facade of the main building and try to get rid of that mistake. And I just left it there because it added a little. I didn't cover it completely because it added a little bit more texture to the entire composition. I guess it makes it more interesting in my eyes somehow. I started adding a little bit more color to the street and to the main focus of the painting, which is this lower part. And I kept my the amount of color very thin. And I tried to mention that a lot on my previous videos, but if I'm going for something that has to be bright, then I really try hard to leave the canvas as visible as possible. But that means use the white of the canvas that reflects a ton of the light, and it brings in this eh, yeah, this illumination that otherwise it would be very, very difficult to do if you were just to put on more layers of, let's say, white or lighter yellows or whatever. You're still not going to get the same result. It's not possible. So for the street and for the sidewalk and for that little lower part of the building, I used really thin layers. So during my painting session, I noticed I needed a little bit more detail for the main focal point of the painting, which is the cafe or restaurant or bar. I don't know what it was in the lower part of the building. I needed a little bit more structure, so I added a little bit more, a couple more lines. But then I had a second thought, and that was the fact that I've been trying to move away from realism into some sort of abstract painting style, abstraction or whatever. And I started thinking that adding more detail to the building might not be the way to go. So I ended up doing the tertiary lines for the restaurant area, and then kind of played around with the fact that, or the thought of yeah, maybe just leaving the rest of the building like it is, without adding more windows or adding more architectural elements of the to the facade. Again, as I wasn't sure what to do with this thought, I moved to the other side of the street, which is the trees and the buildings in the background, and again practicing this mechanic of if I don't know how to do something or what to do with it, then I pause, I take a break, and I do something else, and it works really well. So just to comment a little bit on the other side of the street in this scene, I I really still feel like I didn't add in a lot of detail. I feel like it's still really abstract. I mean, if you were to look at it, just this uh, part of the painting without any context or without me telling you that it's the street or trees or whatever, I think it still works like that. It's not that recognizable that quickly, but it does work with the entire composition, which is what I was going for. Another important detail that I wanted to mention is that even though the trees that I'm painting right now were a bit brighter, I toned it down. I didn't use the correct value for the highlights because it was not meant to be in any way the focus of the scene, and I didn't want it to compete with the brightness and the illumination of the cafe, which, like I mentioned before, it wouldn't have been the case since I'm adding a lot of color, or the layers of color are a bit thicker, but it can still catch your attention a little bit too much if I would have added a bit more of a livelier yellow to the trees. Something really interesting as well was that the I don't think the bike path that I just painted was actually red, but it fit the scene really nicely. So I just went for it. Didn't really care that it wasn't um representing the reality of the location. For this part of the painting, I started using a little bit, just a little bit of white. I don't like using white that much while I'm combining with other colors unless I really need some really bright color, because it really stains the pigment and then it washes away that intensity. But I couldn't really figure out a better way to make this roof bright enough without it being too yellow. So I went for a little bit of white. And obviously, I use a lot more white for the lights. Those lights that I painted on the side and that I'm painting more or less on top of the really thin layer of yellow, um, do contain a lot of white, but it's just a tiny bit. It's really nothing that distracts or that breaks the rest of the colors. I stopped with the restaurant and the bar at this point and moved again to the other side of the painting just to hint at the windows that were illuminated from the building next, like on the other side of the street. And again, this is just the line. I'm really not trying to give it more detail than it needs, but it gets the job done, I would say. It's really hard the entire time trying to think about what is enough detail and what is too much. At this point, I felt like everything was really good. It was balanced correctly, at least on the background and the other side of the street. So I feel comfortable with it. I feel really good. So this level of abstraction for the painting wasn't really my taste. So I ended up adding a couple more details to the building, which is the well, I definitely added a couple of windows and I added the balconies, which I'm quite happy how I did that actually. It's just I took a little bit of darker mix of burnt umber and the Prussian blue and went with the brush from one side to the next, and that was it. I didn't add any specific details for the railing because that I didn't need, and it worked really well. I added those two other windows and the upper railings for the upper balconies, and really struggled not to keep adding more detail, as you can see. So at this point in the video, I you can tell that I'm kind of done with the architectural details. And so I started working a little bit more in the sky. I wanted to have a little bit more richness with that blue. Obviously, I'm mixing in a little bit of white, not too much, but it was necessary for this sunset transition, I guess, in the sky. But this is exactly where I can tell you that I'm really unsure what to do next with the rest of the painting. I honestly feel like it's enough. It doesn't need more detail. It doesn't need more elements because it achieves in my eyes what I wanted. And it's just to convey this warm feeling of a summer evening in Paris, and it's enough. But again, I'm not so sure. With the rest of the composition. If you can, I mean, you can tell that the sidewalk is unfinished. The street is also unfinished. That zebra path is also unfinished, and I'm not sure. What do you think? Should I continue with the painting and finish it, or is that enough? Would you say that this painting is finished?